Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a scenario, which is the topic of what would happen if we live in a world where every nation was developed, okay? Like, let's just say every single nation out of the 201 nations that make up this planet, was as developed as like places like Canada, America, Britain, and so on and so forth. Okay. How would the world actually be like is what I'll be talking about for this video. Okay. As well as not only discussing the scenario of what would happen, but also a lesson to learn about life when it comes to this particular topic. Okay. So now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to how the world would be like if every nation in the world was developed, the simple answer to that question is I don't think it would go very well. In other words, I don't believe it would go well. Okay. And the reason why I would definitely say this for anyone who's interested in this topic for that matter is it simply comes down to the fact that, first and foremost, okay, we would run out of resources. Okay. We would definitely run out of resources. Okay. Because people, especially if you live here in North America, even compared to European standards, and they consume a lot, for that matter, when it comes to North America, specifically Canada and United States, we consume a lot, and I mean a lot of resources, okay? Whether it comes down to things like electricity, food, um, another one would definitely be maybe, for example, aside from those two things, obviously, like materials when we buy things for that matter, whether it could be things like paper, maybe toys, whatever. You get the point, okay? We use up a lot of resources, okay? And I mean a lot, okay? And the fact that we have AI technology nowadays makes it even worse, for that matter, okay? That is the honest truth, to be quite blunt and honest with you, okay? So we use up a lot of resources, okay? And now imagine literally a world where every nation is developed. So we have 8 billion people, okay, who all have the amount of resources that we have here in North America, okay? The truth be told, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to run out of resources quickly, okay? Even if you come up with the best ideas, like maybe come up with indoor farms and this and that, specifically with the fact that things like that take a long time, for that matter, and even more advanced resource extraction techniques and all that stuff. Not unless a miracle were to happen, for that matter, like we would of course find a very advanced, effective way to, of course, speed up, the ability to develop our technologies when it comes to space travel. The simple truth of the matter is, you know, absolutely the world would run out of resources. There's no way they could fulfill that much you know um of a demand, the world for that matter, okay? We would just run out of resources. And it doesn't even include the fact that we have a lot of cultures in Asia, particularly, who eat every and anything. So animals that are already under the threat of extinction, for that matter, would be even more screwed and all that type of stuff. And that's the honest truth of the matter. We would absolutely, as a species, screw up our planet more and have more people who want to be famous, have more people who want to have a lot of money and just in general have higher expectations in life, and the world would just be extremely overwhelmed, and it would not be a good world to live in at all, specifically if you want to actually compete. Now you're not just competing with people in the Western world like North America and Europe. Now you're competing against billions of other people, okay? In other words, 8 billion people, not just a few hundred million like we do in our current world today. Now you're competing against billions of people. So try being a successful YouTuber, try being a successful athlete, anything for that matter. The difficulty level has just shot up through the roof. And it'll be extremely stressful to stand out for anything for that matter. And that's honest truth, okay? So that's the first part, okay? So we would run out of resources, okay? It would be extremely full of a lack of resources, our plan at least. Now let's get to the other issues that obviously would be um a big issue, okay, as well. And this is another one that I think will be more controversial, but it's honest truth, okay? And the other issue that would also be a very big issue as well is, of course, the fact that what would really happen in the world, okay, for that matter, okay? In other words, to sum it up, the world would be very boring, okay? Because whenever you live in a world that that is developed, or a nation more like for that matter is developed, you tend to notice that it's kind of actually really boring, okay? Which is one of the reasons why people in this part of the world, like here in the West, like North America and Europe, are so obsessed with not only movies, but also a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people follow the news so regularly because it offers the only excitement they have in their everyday lives. Now let's live in a world where every nation is developed. What are people going to do then? What are people going to not only do then, what are people going to have to compare themselves to? Okay. If you're a nation that's prosperous, it's like, okay, big deal, big whoop. Every other nation is successful too. So it becomes a question of like, how do you feel special? Like your nation for that matter feels special for that matter. Like America at that point in a world like that will not even be that feel that special to be from America or Canada or Britain. It's like, well, every nation's developed, so what's special about that? So in other words, to sum up what I'm trying to say, it would just be boring. There wouldn't be anything to kind of make the world actually interesting, and since there wouldn't be any world events or crime or violence and stuff like that, like wars and all that stuff, I just feel people would be bored. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say these things are good things, okay? I don't want people to put words in my mouth and say, okay, this is a great thing. We need to live in a world that has these things, okay? Like crime, war, and stuff like that. Don't put words in my mouth, okay? If you're that type of person, okay? So I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just trying to say based on what I know about human psychology, okay? Because the truth of the matter is humans are horrible, okay? Horrible. And I mean horrible at understanding how to actually make life interesting when there's nothing bad happening. In other words, when life is actually peaceful, okay? Humans are terrible at it, okay? Even when you ask a group of your friends when you live in a developed country, hey, what do you guys want to do? We have 2 months off for summer break. What do you want to do? They're like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Because you see right there, that's exactly what I mean. People are horrible at understanding what they want to do, when there's actually times of peace. In other words, the world um to be honest with you, would just be boring because people don't know what the hell they want to do. So the world is just going to be boring and tiresome, and I feel there's going to be a lot of people who, of course, are left out of things as well. Let's add that to who might not be able to become, the best at their craft or be famous and rich and all that type of stuff. And we'll look at the people who have those things, okay, and they'll look at them with envy and hatred because they wish they had the things that they had. Especially the fact that some of those people, a lot of them at least, maybe if anything, most of them might have had a really bad experience with people, like they were bullied or abused by their parents and stuff. So that just even makes the situation even freaking worse. So, in short, to answer your question, we're going to have a lot of very unhappy, disillusioned people who are going to look at the world and say, why am I not part of the good things? And they might lash out and start even causing problems because they want something to happen, which doesn't sound like a very pleasant scenario at all. Okay. So that is the honest truth of the matter to answer your question when it comes to the topic of what would happen if we actually lived in a better world. Okay, it would not go very well, and I feel like a lot of people, would just maybe even kind of wish they were not alive, which is not good at all. Okay, so that is the honest truth. Okay, I'm not speaking on morals or personal feelings. I'm just speaking on simply logistical facts from what I know, okay? So, if there's a lesson to learn from this story, the simple lesson that there is to learn to the story is that do not hope for a perfect world, okay? You know, the world could definitely be better, of course, but do not hope for a perfect world. There's no such thing as a perfect world, okay? The truth of the matter is, what the world needs is just simply for it to be better, okay? Because we might try to make it perfect, and as usual, like humans, for everything we touch, for the most part, we just end up screwing everything up, okay? And that is the honest truth of the matter. So what you need to understand is that hope for things to be better, but don't try to expect to live in a perfect world, as it will never be um able to happen, okay? So, in short, to even be more specific, be careful what you wish for, and that is honest truth. So that's off the saying. Simply put them out. So bye.